Tumbling 38 specials. What we have today is our 38 special, known as the Super Police. And this is a really old school load that was made a long time ago, back when using wad cutters for self-defense was a very popular option. And basically what these do is they're meant to fire very slowly, and because they're moving so slowly and because they're so heavy, they will tumble. And these are a 213 grain cast bullet, and these are basically a cast meant for 35 Remington. These were actually given to me and created by a fellow YouTuber. He used to go by Lead Bullets for Life. Now he goes by Double Clutch or Grind 1962. Angelo over at that channel is really into casting, and he casted these for me several years ago, and I still have a bunch of them. So what we're looking at here is 213 grain lead bullet. That's a 35 Remington bullet. And if you're going to create something like this, you want to stick with the lead bullets, because putting a copper jacket on one might slow it down to the point where you get a squib. Also, you want to have the round nose bullets. And essentially how these are loaded, very simple in a way. Basically, you can see right here we have some 158 grain lead bullets, traditional style bullets, and the place where you crimp up there on the top of the bullet is in a very similar position. So basically what you use is the powder charges for a 158 grain lead bullet, and then you seat that deep enough that you can actually close the cylinder on your particular revolver. So I've created two loads here, and part of that is to address a question I got before, and I'm using universal powder. So basically what I'm doing here is I made some for the snub nose here. Starting charge of this for a 158 grain bullet, seated deep enough to fit this Taurus 605 with a 2-inch barrel here. And then years ago, I did a test like this, and people asked, what if you push it faster? What will happen? And my immediate response was, I think that they won't really tumble. They might really over penetrate. And because the point of a cartridge like this is to be moving at like 700-ish feet per second, that will cause destabilization of that bullet upon impact, and it will tumble. So I'm not really sure what would happen if we pushed them a little bit faster. So what I did here is I loaded just a little bit above the max charge. This is at the starting charge. This is a little bit above the max charge for a 38 special 158 grain, and they're seated out just a little bit further out for my Smith & Wesson 686 here. So we'll see if those still tumble. I have no idea what kind of velocity we'll get on those, and I have no idea on this either, because I've never loaded it with this particular powder before. So we're going to find out. We're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. I'm going to go into plain clear ballistics, see what the best potential of those are, see if they tumble. After that, I'm going to do more of a real world simulation. 4 layers of denim on the first 3-inch piece here that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard to represent ribs or sternum, into more clear ballistics. Denim's a little bit redundant because these are not hollow points, but I still like to keep my tests consistent. And then after that, I am going to shoot at my steel, probably different distances, to see what kind of impact, what kind of shift of aim, point of aim and impact we get with those, see how hard they hit the steel. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up, I'm going to run some of these through the snub nose with that starting charge. I have no idea what to expect here. I'm going to go single action, see what kind of accuracy I can get, see what kind of velocity these might have. 213 grain bullet. Let's see what we get here. 625. That surprised me with the recoil it had. I was just kind of going single action just to kind of let it go. Got a lot of muzzle jump, not a lot of felt recoil, but a lot of muzzle jump. 625 feet per second. That's actually a good velocity. That's what I'm looking for. Keep going with this. 599. 611. 600. 605. So relatively consistent. We can see a very high impact. That's to be expected. It's moving so slow. We're getting muzzle rise. Well, that bullet is still in that barrel, and normally you might only see an inch or so high at 5 yards, but they're so heavy and so slow, they're really arcing out really high. But that's the velocity I want to get, because that can create destabilization and tumbling. So now with our little bit over max charge here in our 4-inch barrel, I have no idea what to expect here. So let's see what we get with these ones. 818. 769. 822. 823, 767, 807. All right, so there was a couple that were a little bit inconsistent, but overall our point of impact is lower. We have a lot more energy, but that might be too much energy and speed for that to tumble. We'll find out. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these do. All right, so I'm going to get relatively close with these so that I know I can make those impacts without them shifting too significantly. So here's our short barrel one, the one that should tumble. Let's see what this gives us. All right, let me go above that if I can with our very fast load here. Let's go take a look. All right, so what we're seeing here, if you can see in there, definite tumbling with the one. The other one looks like it did tumble as well, but not the way it's supposed to. And you're seeing the effect here. I hate to break it to people, but this is what you see with extreme defenders and stuff like that. We definitely have some tumbling going on. So yeah, we did a lot of damage. A nice long bullet. I'm not going to pull these out and show photos of them because, you know, we're not going to learn a lot from that. However, the width of that bullet there is like, I want to say 93/100ths of an inch. So when it's tumbling like that, it's causing massive amounts of damage, like a hollow point, bigger than a hollow point because it's moving sideways. Just that's some of the biggest damage I've seen in a gel test ever. And what we got with our one meant to tumble is we got about 18.5 inches. That's not really what I would consider over penetration whatsoever. Very good load. Now with our faster moving one, we definitely tumbled less, I can tell. We went to about 20.5 inches of penetration. Not bad, but definitely not tumbling in the way that they're supposed to tumble. So we can kind of see the cutoff mark of, you know, what velocities we need to tumble or not. So let's put on our denim, put on our MDF, see how they compare more of our real world simulation. All right, more of our real world simulation. I hope to be able to see some of this damage. And I don't know if the MDF will cause it to not tumble. So let's see what we get here with our short barrel. All right, let's hit it with our longer barrel. Let's go take a look. All right, one more time with our longer barrel because that one passed out the side there. Now let's go take a look. All right, so ignore this one up here. This is going to be really hard for you guys to see because that damage of the other one, it looks like, you know, that bullet stopped in that. So it's going to be hard to see here. And our very bottom shot is with our one that's moving very slow, and we can very clearly see how that impacted like that. With our longer barrel, there's a little bit of oblong here, which means it's starting to tumble, but it's going too fast to really tumble the way it's meant to, like right here. So this is like going through a rib simulation. And after that, we had some pretty good damage. It's not nearly as good as in the clear ballistics, plain clear ballistics, and it's hard to really see this. I wish I could show this a little bit better than what you can see it. Maybe I can flip it here, but before that, let me tell you the measurement here. We're right at about 13 inches of penetration, so that's fine. And this almost went exactly the same, about 20 3/4, 20.5, about the same with or without the MDF. So it's just kind of trucking along through there. Now let me try to pull this out so we can see the top. Maybe be able to see it a little bit better. Yeah, and I can't even see it in there either. The other side, we can see how that stopped in that big, massive damage there. So does this mean It's more effective than anything else out there with, you know, like massive hollow points, but more effective than Extreme Defenders. I don't know, but what I can say is that's a lot of damage in there. We typically don't see stuff like that. So let me shoot at my steel, see what kind of practical accuracy and power we can get on that steel plate, or steel target, I should say. All right, so we're not going to learn a whole lot by showing all these bullets. I did pull one out because I'll measure the lengthwise and I'll show it here on the screen how long that bullet is moving sideways. It's the bullet that I pulled from making all that damage right there with the plain gel. And we can see from multiple angles just how impressive this is. Here's the one through the 4-inch barrel that went too far and arced out the side. Still a lot of good tumbling damage. A lot of damage in there overall. But yeah, that is just a massive amount of tumbling damage that is going on, and it's because it's bullets moving this way. It's going through, spinning like this. Very similar to the damage we see with Extreme Defenders. And a lot of people get mad at me that I say I think the Extreme Defenders are not creating hydraulic magic, and rather they're just tumbling. And I've seen that in a video done by Ballistic High Speed, where they shot a 9mm through. It's one of their more popular videos. If you go look at that, you'll see it kind of tumbling around. And some people say, well, that's because it's clear ballistics and it's not organic gel. But still, at the same time, this is a discussion where a lot of people, you know, they'll say, like, well, hydrostatic shock is a real thing. And hydrostatic shock was created by the ammo companies, and essentially, there is a real phenomenon that's similar to that, where if you get a projectile moving fast enough, the hydraulic energy will cause permanent damage. But a lot of people say that doesn't happen until you're at like 2,200 feet per second. And Extreme Defender handgun bullets are nowhere near that when they're fired and hit a target. So I still think they're just tumbling. But with this, we get kind of the same effect. And 35 Remington bullets are a little bit cheaper, I would say. But you want to use the lead ones, because when you're pushing that down there with like a super low charge, I'm only getting 600 feet per second with something like that. If you put a copper bullet, a copper jacket, it would squib in there potentially. Not always, but potentially that could happen. And if it didn't squib, you'd probably get something like 450 to 500 feet per second. Having the slick lead coating of a pure lead bullet is really what's causing it to work well. And I also would typically only do it in a snub nose revolver, because again, with that long bullet and not a lot of velocity, you have significantly less chance of that getting squibbed. I would stick to a 2-inch barrel or 1.1 7/8 inch if I was going to do loads like this. So that's a close-up look at least this bullet here and the damage in that gel. All right, I'm 12 yards from the target. It might be hard to be practical with something like this, because I think our point of impact is going to shift significantly with this short barrel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim at the very base of the target, maybe 3 or 4 inches from the bottom of that target. Let me just fire one shot to see where they impact when I do that. So they're impacting, I would say, a good 8 inches high. So let me finish these and see how they shoot. Yeah, we got a couple over the target there, so you really have to be mindful of that recoil with something like that. Now, with something like this, let me see where this impacts. About the same, but just a little bit lower. Now, our muzzle rise with this should be easier to control, so let's see how we get with the rest of these. So those are very interesting, how they impact, all going to be kind of high. Now the question is, you know, if they're moving slow enough, they should come back, arc back down from a distance and actually hit pretty good. So let me back it up and launch some for fun. All right, 75 yards from the target. This is just for fun, just for science. I'm not saying you should train defensively from this distance. I'm just doing it for fun. So let's see how this really slow 600 feet per second one goes. If I just aim center mass. Not sure what happened. And a little bit high. Let me do that same thing with our 4-inch barrel here. A little bit high. I'm going to aim below the target. And and a little bit to the left. Let me back it up just a little more. All right, I finally cleared a path so I can see 100 yards. I marked out 100 yards from my target just for fun. These were still hitting a little bit high, so I'm thinking maybe at this distance, if I can see the target, maybe they'll level back off. So 100 yards from the target. I don't know about this. Snub nose with a weird load here. Let me go double action, see what happens. Just a hair left, but the right windage, or elevation, I mean. Well, I could have cooked breakfast and had that and ate that while I waited for that. That took a while. Yeah, just not very consistent. Hitting all over. So I don't know if I can make a hit with this, but we'll find out. All right, so those were hitting high left. So I just aimed at my camera, which is low right, and I was able to get a couple of hits there. So interesting ammo overall, and it's really an interesting look back to what sometimes people will do to get better performance. You know, back when this stuff came out, this is a time where, you know, 158 grain lead round nose was all that was used for probably 3/4 of a century. And, you know, people are looking for something a little bit better. Hollow points came along, they don't really expand, you know. So, you know, wad cutters was a good go-to, and this is another good go-to. Somebody discovered that you could put a 35 Remington bullet in a 38 special and it moves slow, and you'd think, oh, that's not good. But then they realize what's happening when it's moving at about that particular velocity, and I believe it's anywhere between about 600, you know, 550, 600 to 700, 750. In that range, we'll get that really good tumbling like what we saw. And that we did see that, you know, at 600 feet per second, these did phenomenal. They did massive damage, and then they stopped right where you want around to stop. Now, when we went through the rib simulation, that limited it quite a bit because we were going through sideways, and it's like a 90 caliber width that's going through. It really limited that penetration quite a bit, so that might be a downfall to that. But overall, I'm going to say these did quite well. I'm really surprised with how they did. So interesting test, might be something to consider, maybe not. The point of impact is definitely a lot different than normal rounds. So that's what you get today with our 38 Super Police test. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.